Thank you everybody for joining. We still got about a minute and a half left, and then we will get started. All right, let's get started. Thank you everybody for joining this first broadcast of the Fall 2020 Maryville Cyber Speaker Series. We are pleased to have Ladi Adefala joining us to kick off this series. We also have Brian Gant and Drew Clauser on the line as our panelists. Brian is our Chief Cybersecurity Faculty in the Simon School of Business at Maryville University. Drew is our GA, our Graduate Assistant. Thanks for being here, guys. And Ladi is the founder of Omega 316. Ladi, pleased to have you here. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? I hope so. Perfect. So before we even get into the rest of the presentation, what I'd like to do, first of all, is I'd like to raise the energy level. If you're like me and you've been joining like Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting, or you've been going from call to call when you're at home, you know, the energy level could kind of just get drained over time, especially at 5 p.m., right, on a work day. So we're going to raise that energy level. And the way we're going to do that is we are going to dance. Yeah, I know some of you are probably saying I don't do dance, I don't, please just indulge me for a minute. Dance, if you don't do dance, you can stretch out in your seats, you can raise the roof, you can laugh at some of us that are going to be dancing, okay? So that's what we're going to do right now. There you go. I like it. That's hilarious. That's the way to do it. This is the social distancing version. Woo! I love it. Okay, wait a minute. All righty. Thank you for your audience participation. That was fun. That was fun. We appreciate that. The title of our presentation today is Cybercrime, Fast and Furious, subtitled Amp Up Your Cyber Career and Cyber Skills. And what we wanted to do with this presentation was we wanted to explore three fundamental questions. The first question is cybercrime really fast and furious, right? Is it really fast and furious? And what we mean by that is it nonstop action? Is there a sense that we can say there's never a dull moment when it comes to cybercrime? And we kind of answered that relatively quickly. We said, well, Yeah, it feels that way. It definitely feels like it's fast and furious, nonstop action. It's always on. And the reason it feels that way is because data breaches keep happening on a regular basis. We hear about all these data breaches. So then the next question is, why do these data breaches keep happening? Right? So that was question number 2 for us. And then the third question is, what does this mean for you and your career as it relates to cyber and the cyber industry? So those are the 3 main questions. We already answered number 1, and 2 and 3 we're going to, and essentially that's what this presentation is about. So without further ado, let's move to high-level agenda for our presentation this evening. First of all, there's 3 fundamental things we're going to talk about. We're going to start off with, why should you care? Why in the world should you care about the information we're going to be sharing with you? And then we'll go to trying to tackle that question that I posed earlier, which is, why do data breaches keep happening? And the way we're going to do that is we're going to examine some of the cybercriminal tactics, some of these interesting and surprising tactics that cybercriminals use to do the malicious things. And then my favorite section, so what? Now what? So what does that mean for you as an individual or as a cyber professional? Now what are we going to do about it? So why do you care? There's a couple of reasons you care. First of all, the reason fundamentally you care is because everyone is vulnerable. I don't care if you're a parent or a child, if you're an individual or business, or even if you're young or old, everyone is vulnerable. If government agencies around the world or intelligence services around the world can get compromised as a result of cyber attacks, we all can. So everybody has risk factors that sometimes are surprising to hear. And we're going to provide some information here that will help you reduce those risk factors. So that's number 1 reason why you care. But the other reason you care is best illustrated with a story. And this really applies if you're either looking to get into the cyber industry market or industry, or you're already in the cyber industry and you're just looking to elevate and amp up your career, right? So that second reason is best illustrated with a story. Before 1968, the picture you're looking at here, this is how the high jump was actually done. People that wanted to jump, do high jump would actually use one of these techniques, either the scissors or the straddle, and they would, try to jump. And these techniques actually required a forward approach to the bar. So that was before 1968. On October 20th, 1968, in Mexico City at the Olympic Games, a young 21-year-old boy by the name of Dick Fosbury decided he was going to use a different technique. This technique he had been using to improve his jumping skills, right? So this was something that he had been working on, and he had improved so much so using this technique that by the time he got to the Olympic Games, he was able to win the Olympic gold medal for the US using this particular technique. So then I go back to that, what's the second reason why you care? So just like in Dick Fosbury's case, he used this technique to improve his jumping skills. We're going to offer you a technique to actually help you improve your cyber skills. Now, what's really, really fascinating about Fosbury and this technique was that not only did he win the Olympic gold, he also transformed the entire sport. Now, when we look at people that do like high jumps and what have you, we can't even imagine, right, somebody doing a high jump without using this particular technique. That technique is actually called the Fosbury flop, named after him as well. So we're going to offer you a technique that's going to help you improve your cyber skills. Now, when it comes to cyber and life in general, we don't have Olympic gold. I mean, if people have Olympic gold in life, let me know, but we don't have that. But if you keep applying this technique that I'm going to offer to you, it will help you not only improve, but get to a point in your career where you're like, this is really, really significant. This is really, really significant. And we're not competing with other people necessarily when it comes to our careers. We're competing with ourselves. We want to be the best versions of ourselves when we talk about improving. And I came across a quote that said, oh yeah, this is great. The quote captures the sentiment I'm trying to convey here. And that sentiment is, it's never too late to be who you might have been. And I don't know where you are in your career right now when it comes to cyber or any other career, frankly. But I also want to say, not only is it never too late to be who you might have been, but it's never too early. It's never too early to be who you might have been either. So that's why we care. So that's the first kind of segment of our presentation. Now let's turn our attention to some of the cyber criminal tactics. Okay, remember we said we were going to, as item number 2, we're going to look and explore the question, why do data breaches keep happening, right? And we're going to explore that by examining some of these interesting cyber criminal tactics. For this one though, first, I'm going to ask you guys a question, and let's test out the question, by the way. Provide your answers via chat. Hopefully we'll be able to look at them and see them. But the question is, which of the Fast and Furious movies, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can't even remember the count, which one of them featured the green Dodge Charger that you're looking at in this picture? So let me look at chat and see if we get any responses. Let's see what's going on. Yada, yada, yada. I don't see any responses yet. I'm hoping that people, again, we're trying to test that. Oh, Tokyo Drift. Okay, somebody said that. I have never watched any of those movies. Well, that's good to know. Somebody said 3 or 4. I'm going to say the first one. Some people said 7. All right, that's good. At least, okay, so chat is working. All right, so that's good. And we can see some responses. Well, the Fast and Furious version was Fast and Furious 7, okay? And in Fast and Furious 7, the bad guy, in this case, Jason Statham, the guy on the left wearing sunglasses, all of the tactics that he used were all physical, like, you know, in the physical world, right? He used guns and explosives, and he was doing all this bad stuff. And in the physical world, what you see is what you get when we talk about criminal tactics. However, in the cyber world, not so much, not so much. In fact, what you see is not what you get, is not what you get. Oftentimes you see something and you get the exact opposite. You get the exact, so let me illustrate this particular tactic with the next slide. So imagine, for example, that you get an email that says, hey, you know, you just got a bonus. That bonus check is between $5,000 to $10,000, but to see your specific bonus amount, you have to click on this link and you check the link, right? Everyone's kind of very leery of, you know, links and opening attachments or clicking on things. So you kind of check it, you see it points to a SharePoint site, and you're so excited, especially when you think about, you know, what's going on with furloughs and layoffs and, you know, kind of COVID era, you know, it's kind of like, oh, you're so excited. You're like, okay. So you click on that. And then the next thing that happens is you get prompted to log into your SharePoint site. So this is an Office 365 login, and you get, okay, you're like, all right, that's good. So you enter in your credentials. And even if, this is an important element, even if you have two-factor, multi-factor authentication enabled, you would still have to log in, right? Because, you know, two-factor comes in, you log into your credentials, all right? And then after that, you get this dialog box that says permissions requested for the O365 access, and it lists all of these permissions, be able to read contacts, read your mail, nodes, files, all that stuff. Now, let me pause on this one. Nobody ever reads these. I mean, the average user doesn't even know what you're talking about. It's kind of like, I mean, it's like reading the fine print in, you know, commercials or ads. Nobody ever reads them, especially when you have money in your mind and you're like, hey, I got to get a bonus check, right? So you're looking to see. So, all right. So unfortunately, since most people just accept these permissions, you would have fallen victim, if you did that, to a very effective phishing email. Now, what's really effective about this, a couple of things. Number one is you get presented almost perfectly an identical login page for Office 365, right? And even if, this is where it becomes even more effective, even if, you know, two-factor authentication is enabled, a lot of people think, oh, all I got to do is enable two-factor authentication, I'll be safe. Even if two-factor was enabled, you would still have to log in. And you would, so it would not, that protection mechanism would not actually be effective against this particular phishing scam. All right. The second element of this is that web link, right? We're going to talk more about that in the next slide. So that web link is item number 2 there. I kind of blew it up. And really, that's the missing link. No pun intended. That's the missing link. And unfortunately, your credentials would have been sent to the bad guys in Sofia, Bulgaria. That's what would have happened. So what you see is not what you get. You saw a bonus kind of PDF and hopefully some money in your account. What you got was not that. In fact, you lost your credentials. So now let's move to that item number 2. So I talked about this web link, right? Now, nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody, very few people. The average user is not going to go check the web link and try to see if, oh, this web link is malicious. I mean, it's just unreal. Again, especially when you already have something else in your mind that you're trying to get accomplished. But some people, for the benefit of those that are interested, I wanted to kind of share what was going on with this missing link in the web link. All right, so a couple of things we're going to talk about. Number 1 is see this redirect URI where it, so that redirect URI basically says redirect everything that I get credential-wise and permission-wise to this address. And that HTTPS:// those are encoded characters, office, HNOC, that actual domain is being hosted. It's actually being hosted out of Sofia, Bulgaria, right? Now, here's an interesting thought. Do you remember all these, can you see all these, well, these %20s are just spaces, right? Encoded spaces, but can you see all these contacts that read, user read, mail read, all that? Do you remember those permissions you agreed to? In fact, let me go back a little bit. Oh, I went back to, see these permissions you kind of agreed to, right? Well, those permissions are right here. Those are all the things, the authorization permissions you gave in your credentials, and you sent that to the bad guys in Sofia, Bulgaria. Now, here's one thing I want to explain. When I say you sent your credentials to the bad guys in Bulgaria, what we're saying isn't that you sent your username and password. The way Office 365 works is those credentials are tokenized. So a token, think of a token as a fingerprint, is just issued with the right permissions. And it actually goes to an app because it's actually a cloud-based app that's requesting those permissions. So the bad guys are really, getting, I guess, more sophisticated in how they deliver these types of phishing campaigns. Instead of just getting, the normal links, they're using, cloud-based apps now to be able to deliver that, right? And then the last thing I want to point out on this particular web link is you see here where it says scope equals offline access. So those tokens that you get, usually there's an expiration timer on them. It's a security feature to allow people to re-authenticate, all right, and reauthorize. Yeah, anytime you have a scope equals offline access here, it means, it's an indefinite timer. So the bad guys have your credentials and those permissions indefinitely. They don't have to re-authenticate unless, of course, you go ahead, you notice something fishy and you go ahead and change your credentials. Now, here is a cautionary tale. Cautionary tale. A lot of large organizations try to run phishing campaigns, right? Everybody, hey, they want to test their defenses, run phishing campaigns. I beg you, I beg you, I beg you. During these COVID times where everyone's super sensitive, there's furloughs going on, layoffs going on, please do not use the bonus kind of lure to kind of, in a phishing simulation, because that just ticks off employees. It just ticks them off. It's just highly insensitive. How do I know this? Well, that actually happened. The Chicago Tribune, they did that. And the employees were not very happy. They were not, put yourself in their shoes. Like, not happy. The company actually had to apologize to the employees for this. Now, so talking about this phishing email, we're saying, okay, the web link was the missing kind of piece of information, right? And the average user is going to check that. But sometimes people have this sense that they can, they have a sense that they can tell a malicious link from a non-malicious one, right? I mean, so you guys probably think that. How many of you actually, before I proceed, I'm going to ask people, how many of you actually think you can tell a malicious link from one that's not malicious? Please just say, say I, or, I just want to see how many account. Hopefully some people say, I want to see, okay, all right. Let's get some people. Oh, I like somebody said maybe. That's a good one. Oh, somebody said not me. Yes, I think I can. Okay, good. We got some takers. Oh, somebody actually said no, I can't sometime. All right, let's look at some links. Question: which one of these links is malicious? One or two. So now in your responses, let me one or two. By the way, don't Google these things. Definitely don't Google these, by the way. Don't. That's another disclaimer, actually. I didn't even think about that. Don't Google. Just play along, have some fun with it. Don't Google. This is not the time to Google that stuff. Somebody says two, somebody says two, somebody says neither, somebody says one. Two, both, both. Some people are just guessing at this point, but okay. All right, so here's the deal. All right, so we have actually kind of like an equal take. What's really more important though is why, and if this was live, we'll be able to do more interaction to see why you guys think it's one or two, but let me just reveal the answer. The malicious one is one, and here's why. Here's why this one's malicious, okay? Number one, anytime, both of them have HTTP, but anytime you have HTTP versus HTTPS, that's kind of like, you got to be on guard. I'm not saying all of them are bad, but you just got to be on guard, right? Number two, anytime you see Google Doc, legitimate Google Doc, it's usually paired with HTTPS. You're not going to have Google Doc. And by the way, it's not even Google Doc now, it's docs.google. And that is typically going to be a HTTPS, right? So the fact that somebody is trying to spoof, for lack of a better phrase, Google Doc already tells me they're trying to do something they're not supposed to be doing. You kind of see my logic there. And then of course, the last piece is when you talk about the PHP extension at the end of the URL, which really represents code execution. So when you combine all of those things together, yeah, you're like, one is it? Now, here's the thing. Most people pick two because it has all these foreign addresses, and that does not mean zilch, really. I mean, that could be, or it could be, right? So it just depends. It could be. But I wanted to just give you guys a little bit of some insight about how to look at some of these URLs. But again, the average user isn't going to do this. Now, one of the other things that people ask me, or they tell me when I bring this up, they say, well, that's fine. Even if I don't see the URL, when I get to a particular website, I'll be able to tell that this website is fake, right? I'll be able to tell if this website is fake. All right. So again, you guys, this is an interactive session. I want to keep you guys awake. It's 5 p.m. Tell me, are you going to be able to tell when you see a fake or a real website? Come on. Let's go, people. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. I want to see some responses. Yes, yeah, we got some yeses. All right. We got a maybe. I like the maybes. The maybes are like, I don't want to, I'm not too confident. Yes, but by that point it's too late. You're right. By that point it's too late. Well, you just have to not paying attention. Yeah, because you got a bonus check on your mind. All right, so we're gonna test that out. Let's just test out. Depends if I'm paying attention. Okay, well, let's test this out. You're paying attention right now. Most of you, hopefully, are paying attention. Is this a real Google sign-in page or not? Is this real or not? By the way, definitely don't Google these things, right? Don't try to be smart about them. Again, I'll keep repeating that. Let's see what you guys think. Somebody says not real. Somebody says yes. I wonder why that person says not real. How was that? How are you guys? Man, I wish this was like, for whoever says it's not real, can you tell me how you're saying it's not real? What are you looking at that's telling you it's not real or it's fake? Give me a reason. I'm gonna hang on. I don't want to call people out because I can see their names. It looks good to me. Yeah, it looks perfectly fine. I wanted to see the URL. No, you can't see the URL. That's the point. Everybody wants to see the URL. You can't see the URL because a Google sign in a page would have forget password and not forget email. Okay. The real Google page does not give an option to sign in as guest privately. All right. So here's I got some good meat there. Okay. So is this real or fake then? This next one, this is a new page, by the way. I just gave you, I'm on the next slide. Is this one real or fake? For all of you guys that said that was fake. Hello? Work with me. Let's see. Still fake. You guys are just guessing at this point. All right, I'm gonna put both of them side by side. Let me just, in the interest of time, let me put both of them side by side. Okay, and they're smaller. I don't know if you can see them, but here's the thing. Here's the real one, here's the fake one. The real one, and for those of you that are saying forget email, they both have forget email, right? Here's the distinguishing factor in this particular one, right? The real one says use a private window to sign in, okay? The fake one says use guest mode to sign in privately. You see these subtle, they're very, very subtle difference. By the way, they could have been exactly alike, at which point you have no choice but to rely on the URL. But sometimes people say, oh yeah, I can see, when I see the web, I'll be able to, no, you won't. Right, let's check another one. See if this one's fun because it's your bank account, money is involved. Okay, so let's see what let's see. By the way, for those that are saying that's fake, you can go now, well, not now, after the presentation, you could go to your Google sign-in page. Trust me, it shows use private mode to sign in.
Hey, Ladi,
right,
I just checked it. I can
come
verify
on, is this
that
the real or the fake one? Come on, folks. You guys are a great audience, by the way. I'm loving this. This is awesome. Hello, I got nothing. This one is fake. It would not ask you. No. Where am I? Are you guys responding to the B of A? Can you guys see my B of A? Okay, good. So somebody said, yeah, real, looks real. Yeah, it looks real. I like that clone. real. So I'm unsure now that you fooled me with the last. I didn't fool you. I wasn't planning to fool you. I was just trying to tell you how difficult. What you see is definitely not what you get. That's the only point I'm trying to make here. What you see is not what you get. That's the only point. No matter how specialized your skills are. I want to see both before I make a choice. Okay, I'll see. Okay, I'll give you both. All right, here's the second one. Somebody says I want to see both. All right, here's the second one. Not that it matters. Trust me, when I was digging up these, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, you're kidding. These things are like, this one is legitimate. One is fake. How you, who is even saying that? All right, let me put them side by side. This one's fake. Let me put them side by side. Let's see if this makes, okay, side by side. What do you, oh, sorry, hang on. All right, let me kind of point out the differences, okay? Here's the real one, and the real one was the second one, by the way. The real one, very subtle, very, very subtle. That Bank B of A logo is a little lighter color red. They changed that logo recently, right? That's number one compared to this guy, right? That's number one. Number two, the website has a security on this menu bar. Can you guys see where I'm pointing to, where it says security? Not visible here at all. Those are the only subtle differences. By the way, you enter your credentials at this point, you're gone. I mean, like your whole bank account is, moved off. All right, so what's my point? We started out with asking that question, why do data breaches keep happening? You wanna know why data breaches keep happening? A big part of that is because it's incredibly difficult for you to be able to tell and distinguish what's real or what's fake when you're online. Incredibly difficult. I don't care if you're a cyber professional or what, it's so difficult. And then you add the added element of, depending on your mindset, are you looking for a bonus check, paying attention, not paying attention? That adds a whole new kind of level to this whole thing. Okay, so let me see. Is there anything else in chat that I need to look at? Hang on. Where's my chat? All right. I want to interact with you guys a little bit. This cameras don't want you to hit the security window. I know. That's the whole point. It's not got it. One was missing. Yeah, one was got you got it. They both look professional to me. I mean, these guys are pretty good. So, all right. So now let's move on to the next tactic. Okay. This one's about social. So again, we're going to keep this interactive. I got a question for you guys. How many monthly active users do you think are on Facebook? Give me a number, please. I'm waiting for your number. Monthly, I'll repeat that. Monthly, yeah, don't Google it. That's a good, please don't, yeah, come on, guys. Don't do that. I mean, that's just, you're spoiling the fun if you Google it. Don't Google it, right? Just throw out numbers. Monthly active users. Monthly active users, 150 million. Facebook is easily 3 billion. Somebody obviously, I'm sure all of you are on Facebook, at least 5. Who's saying that? 5.2 billion or million, 5 million. Okay, well, in the interest of time, let me tell you what it is. 2.6 billion monthly. This is not like total subscribers. This is monthly active users. Monthly, just for perspective, just so that you guys understand the kind of magnitude of what we're talking about here. The population of India and China both were 1.3 billion each in 2018. That's like combining the population of those two countries together. That's what monthly Facebook sees in active users. All right. Here's the next question. So before this one, I gotta pause. This is the pausing point. Sometimes when I say this, people don't know what I'm talking about. So for those of you who don't know what Tinder is, or who are pretending not to know what Tinder is a mobile dating application that allows users to swipe either right or left, depending on if they want to date somebody. Okay, so here's the question. How many of those swipes do you think occurs on a daily basis? So Facebook was monthly. This is daily, on a daily basis. Please tell me. And trust me, stay with me on this. There's an important, kind of punchline to all of this. Let's see what you guys come up with. Hello. 110. Oh, come on. People are just guessing billions now. I mean, come on, pay attention. 10 billion, 2.6. What we got? Yeah, not 2.6. 1.6 billion swipes. Can you imagine that? I don't know what people are doing on Tinder. I mean, it's like 1.6 billion swipes. That's a lot. That is a lot. All right. This one I'm not going to ask you guys because I want to move on with time. The daily, so we did monthly with Facebook, we did daily with Tinder. Now we're going to do on a second-by-second basis with LinkedIn. And can you imagine that LinkedIn has every second 2 new members, every single second? Can you imagine that? All right, so what's the point in all of this? Number one, cybercriminals, they love anywhere where there's high volume and high engagement. Why do they love that? Because the economics just make sense. There is the greatest chance of success for the cybercriminal where there's 2.6 billion monthly active users, 1.6 billion spikes. There's just more engagement there. So the economics just makes sense for it's a numbers game. So that's number one. Number two, have you noticed that when it comes to social, right? Social media, when you get social notifications, like somebody sends you a friend request or a connection request, or they like your post, or have you noticed there's some of a high that you feel? You kind of feel good. It's a feel good hormone, right? It's kind of like dopamine. You get a dopamine hit. Boom. It's like, yeah, can you feel that? Yeah, a lot of us, if not all of us, experience that. Now, why am I telling you this? When you have high engagement population that attracts cyber criminals, and then the potential victims are kind of click happy because they want to get a dopamine hit. When you put those two things together, that is a recipe for disaster, like a recipe for people just to get owned, which means compromised every single time. Now, let's illustrate that. And that's the reason, by the way, that's the same reason why if somebody sends you a LinkedIn connection request like this, you're more likely to say connect, because I want to increase my likes. I want to have how many followers on social media and connections. I mean, so psychologically and mentally, we want to get that dopamine hit. So here's a question for you. Somebody sends you this LinkedIn connection request, Hazel. Hazel says, I'm Hazel, I want to connect. Yeah, more than likely you're going to click on it. But the better thing to do, first of all, is to take Hazel's picture and do a Google reverse image search on that picture to see what happens, right? You just never know if is Hazel really Hazel or is it somebody else? Again, going back to the theme, what you see is not what you get. In the physical world, what you see is what you get. In the cyber world, don't even try. All right, so I did that for Hazel, and you can see Hazel is not just Hazel, by the way. Hazel is Eric. Hazel is Ria. Hazel is Danielle. Hazel is everywhere, pretty much. So then the question becomes, why is somebody that's not the person they're, kind of professing to be trying to connect with you with a fake profile? Why are they trying? That's the bigger question. Why are they trying to connect with you? All right. So you got to think about that. Now, more interestingly for us, cyber criminals, the really good ones, they know you're going to do a Google reverse image search on them. They know this. So they don't use these types of pictures or images. They use, let me pause for effect. They use pictures of people that do not exist. Pictures of people that do not exist. You're probably thinking, what in the world is he talking about? What in the world is he talking about? I will show you what I'm talking about. These are pictures of people that do not exist. They look perfectly normal to me and to you. I wish I could see chat and the presentation as well, but I'm going to pause real quick and just look at chat. What do you mean? Oh, do you mean AI created photo? Someone's beating me to the punch here, but hang on. These are pictures of people that do not exist. Yeah, so somebody actually kind of beat me to the punch. But here's the thing. The question people ask is, how in the world are they getting pictures of people that don't exist? Well, there's a website for that. Don't go to the website right now. Don't go there, please. I beg you. Just stay focused. Don't go to the website right now. The website, appropriately named, says this person does not exist.com. Ta-da! That's all. And by the way, this is just an example. There's other methods to actually get that. And yes, how are these pictures on that website generated? They're powered by AI, artificial intelligence, and it will create. What happens when you go to that website? The first time you go there, it instantly generates a picture, and then once you refresh that page, it keeps generating new pictures. So all they got to do is take that picture, plop it into the LinkedIn profile, bada bing, bada boom, and then send you a LinkedIn connection request. So your Google reverse image search defense, so to speak, isn't going to work. Isn't going to work. So now AI sometimes gets a bad rap, but AI is good. It's good, man. You guys have smart speakers at home. Some of you that have Google Home or Alexa, Echo, it's all good. In fact, you know what? With Alexa right now, did you know that you can actually have Alexa find you a job at McDonald's? You can say, Alexa, find me a job at McDonald's, and it will ask you a couple of questions, 3 or 4, and then send you a link to complete your online kind of resume online or application online. That's pretty powerful. It's, McDonald's is obviously trying to be like the tech hip place to be, trying to attract the right talent. Now, for some of us that don't want to work at McDonald's, just saying, some of us don't necessarily want to work at McDonald's, or they're just looking for jobs the good old fashioned way. We go online to look for our jobs. Now, this next tactic, what I want you guys to do, I beg you, put yourself in the shoes of this person. So imagine that you've been furloughed from your regular job. It's COVID, things are tough, it's affecting everybody, but you've been furloughed. So you haven't been technically laid off, but they're just like, sit at home for a while, we can't pay you. Hopefully we'll be able to hire you back on, but you're kind of like in limbo. And then you say, well, yeah, I got to work. And I don't know if they're going to have me back or not? So you go online and you start looking for jobs, and you see all of these job ads for Sobeys, right? You're like, oh, this is great. This is awesome. I want to apply for one of these jobs. So you apply. 3 hours later, right? 3 hours later, somebody says you get a call, right? From HR. You go through the first interview, right? A couple of hours later, the second interview. And then the third interview, they say, hey, we're going to send you an offer later tonight. It seems like you're a great candidate. We're in dire need, right? So you're like, wow, this is awesome. And true to form, they send you an actual offer letter, complete offer letter, right? They're like, and so you're so excited. You're like, oh man, this is great. I got a job, great benefits, all that stuff. With that, of course, you put in your W-2s and you file all that information, as is customary with any, kind of offer package. But also, because it's COVID time, they send you a check. They send you a check for your home office equipment. And they say, okay, because you had to work from home, we're going to pay you for everything you need, chair, desk, table, internet connectivity, all that stuff, right? And we have a supply that we use, right? So they send you with that check. Now, so what do? You say, well, since I was furloughed from that, I got to go resign from my old job, right? So you go there and you tell them, hey, sorry, I'm going to leave that job. And then after the following day, you get an email from your new employer, the Sobeys guys. They say, hey, to get your home office equipment, we want you to, now activate or transfer funds to our home office supplier, right? Just transfer those funds to a home office supplier, and you'll get all your home office equipment. You have a check. You're like, oh, that's great. You go into your B of A, your real Bank of America website this time, and then you try to transfer funds. Right? You type in the email contact information to give you his email or phone number in this case, right? So you use the Zelle thing, and you hit send, and 2 minutes later, bing, your phone rings. It's your bank. Your bank's like, we just saw that you tried to issue a funds transfer to this address, to this email address. They're like, sorry, we cannot honor that because that address is on the fraud list. So then you're like, holy crap. Looks like I've been, scammed, which you have been scammed. You have been scammed in an effective way. Like I said, what you see, even though what we're seeing here looks like a perfectly legitimate check, is not what you get when we talk about cyber. Absolutely not what you get. So what did you lose? In this case, you didn't get anything. You actually lost your furlough job, which, sometimes you actually lose money if your bank doesn't catch it, which is an interesting, very, very interesting thought. Now, how does this unfold? How does this happen? Okay. I kid you not. LinkedIn is one of the most powerful tools the cyber criminals can use for a lot of different reasons. First of all, did you know that LinkedIn does not validate anything you put on your LinkedIn profile? I could tell you on my LinkedIn profile, I work for Google. That means what? I work for Google. You could. They're not validating squat, right? Now, how does that even relate to this? Well, what happens is you can also post, believe it or not, a job opening for a company that, according to LinkedIn, you work for. Does that make sense? You can actually post a job, and when you pay for it, right? For every job posting, actually some of them are free, but yeah, which I hope they fixed this flaw now, but very, very recently they hadn't fixed it, right? You can post that, and all of a sudden, that's it. There's a job opening, and in this example, somebody actually posted the job opening for the CEO of Google, just to make a point, right? Just to make a point. They posted on LinkedIn. And you know what's even worse with this? I believe this actually, because they have the Google website actually has an interconnection with this, it actually connected back to the Google website. So you can see the web URL is actually a Google search thing. I mean, this is crazy, right? But there's so many other techniques they use for social media. My message to you guys here, besides what you see is not what you get, what you also post, especially when it comes to social media, can be used in very creative ways very, very creative ways that you may not even think about, right? Again, even for me right now, if you look me up on LinkedIn, don't look me up. Well, I guess you can look me up on LinkedIn. I work for a company. So I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile since my last job, which was a while ago. So, it still sends me stuff like I work for that company, right? Oh, this coworker of yours. I'm like, I don't have any coworkers like from my old company. So it's really incredible. All right. So what does all that mean? What's the impact, right? And so oftentimes the impact is more than meets the eye. And I go back to Fast and Furious. We're on Fast and Furious. Right? This is Fast and Furious 7. And for those of you who haven't seen that movie or watched it, Vin Diesel is like the main character. He's been a main character in a number of these movies. But all before this particular version of Fast and Furious, he was a good guy. He was a good guy. He was the action hero. He was the guy trying to save. But in this one, he became the bad guy. He became the bad guy. So that's kind of like weird. You're like, what in the world? And the reason I'm bringing this up, the reason he's a bad guy is because Charlize Theron, she's the bad, kind of villain in the movie. She actually was holding his family ransom, right? She was holding his family ransom. I hope it's Fast and Furious 7. I think it is. Anyway, she was holding his family ransom. Now, when you think about this is a physical world, right? The impact where cyber criminals can use the first two techniques we discussed, using those sophisticated phishing emails and using social tactics, they can combine that. And the reason they want to combine those two elements is so that they can actually drop malicious software into either your home, because everyone's working from home now, right? Your home, even before that, they could drop it in your home, or at work. That's the whole kind of point. They want to be able to insert themselves in there. And one of the most popular ones right now, kind of a malicious software that they download or that they insert, is ransomware. Okay, so we're going to explore a juicy data breach that was really ransomware oriented. So I hope none of you drive Hondas, right? If you do, sorry. All right. So this data breach occurred in June of this year. So this was within all the COVID stuff. And the bad guys affected, so impact-wise, global manufacturing for really across multiple different manufacturing plants for Honda across the world, right? And what did they drop? Ransomware. The ransomware name is Econs, which is snake backwards. So you got to give it to the bad guys. They're pretty creative, right? It's kind of like, I'm going to kind of pretty creative guys, pretty smart, right? So what does the ransomware do? It encrypted all of those files that they were, and systems, right? The files that were on systems that was responsible for their production lines. So held them ransom. They didn't disclose how much the ransom was. So, well, I kind of try to figure out maybe how much we're looking at here. How long were they down for? 5 days, right? Give or take another 1 or 2 days, right? So when you think about 5 days downtime, it's kind of, wow, how much is that? We'll come back to that in a minute. So 2 things I want to point out for the technically inclined folks. How do they know that this was ransomware focused on Honda? When you do a reverse engineering exercise on that particular malicious software ransomware, these are snapshots. The guys from Malwarebytes actually provided this. You can see where it says, you can see the names of the ransomware, Econs, and then you can also see where they're actually specifically targeting, right, Honda.com. So when you talk about the impact, think email, think social. Anytime you see some of those sophisticated, well, not necessarily sophisticated, but very, very focused kind of attacks, they've done a boatload of threat intelligence on you, the potential target. And, the best place to do it, I kid you not, is LinkedIn, believe it or not. It's the best place to do it. So let me ask you a question. Let's get back to some interactive stuff. Let me see what's going on in chat. Oh, I've got a question too. All right, I will get to that in a minute. Here's a question for you guys. For 5 days of downtime, which is when the ransomware was active, how much do you think that downtime cost Honda? How much? Let's see. Come on, 3 billion. Everyone's on the billion train now. Wow. Millions. Yeah. Millions. 15 million. Yeah. Maybe 100,000. Who's saying, yeah, well, yeah, now I know who's saying 100,000. That doesn't count. All right. Let me just share with you guys. It was over $100 million when you think about it. So this may sound like fun and games when we're talking about, oh yeah, Office 365 credentials and phishing scams, web apps, or social media. All that. It may sound like fun and games, or the fake check for 4,300. At the individual level, that's pretty significant. But when you think about it from a company or organization perspective, I mean, these guys are in a world of hurt when you think about it. So that's one of the major impacts. Now I come to my favorite section, right? So we talked about why data breaches keep happening. We explored some of those tactics that they use. Hopefully that you got some benefit and insight in that. So the Office 365 or cloud-based apps, Azure, all those apps are now being leveraged by cybercriminals, right? So it's not just regular credentials, website. They're now using apps so they can get your credentials and tokens, and they can use that. All right, so we talked about all that. We talked about the impact. So now I come to my so what, now what? Yum, yum, yum. Question. This one I'm going to pause. Which one of the JLo pictures do you prefer? The one on the left or the one on the right? Yes, I can't wait for this one. This is going to be good. Good. Got some people. Come on. Are you guys awake? Wake up. Come on. Somebody says both. Somebody says right. Somebody says, which one do you prefer? Come on. I mean, there's a lot more people. How many people do we have? Somebody says left. There's a lot more people than I'm seeing responses for. Are you the actual person? Well, I don't know. Somebody says left. Somebody says left. Okay, cool. Here's what's interesting. You want to know what's really interesting about this? The one on the left is not even Jennifer Lopez. Okay? The one on the left is actually a 19-year-old model that looks like Jennifer Lopez. All right? So what? Right? What you see is definitely not what you get. So then the question now is, if what we see is not what we get, what are we supposed to do about this? Well, what I want to encourage us to do is I want to encourage us to see differently. I want to encourage us not just to see with our eyes, but to see with our minds. To see with our minds. And what I mean by seeing with our minds, you guys, I'm sure all of us have been in this situation. Imagine you go to a party, right? You go to a party and maybe most of the people that you see there, you're like, they're in our 30s or something. So you kind of say, oh yeah, most people are in the, but then you see somebody that looks like extremely young and you're like, man, this person looks like they're 19, right? So you're seeing with your eyes. That's an example of seeing with your eyes. But then during the course of conversation, you find out that person says, oh, I graduated from college when I was 23, right? They give you some additional information and all of a sudden you start seeing with your mind. You start activating, you're like, okay, she graduated 23, she can't be 19, right? So then you're trying to calculate how old she, or he or she is probably. You get what I'm saying? So what I want to encourage us to do is not just see with our eyes, we got to see with our minds as well. But by the way, here's another example. COVID is a great example for this, right? You get into a store and you see somebody that doesn't look sick, right? They're not sneezing. There's none of that stuff going on. No symptoms, not right. That's seeing with your eyes. That's when you see with your eyes. But to see with your mind, you got to also know, right? You have to have some information that says, hey, COVID sometimes is asymptomatic, meaning some people display symptoms, some people don't. Right? So when you see with your mind, then you're like, oh, I got to practice my hygiene to do this. Now, hygiene, again, in the physical world, there's also a parallel in the cyber world. And the way to actually practice hygiene, it requires information. You got to know. For example, you got to know COVID is asymptomatic. That's information. That's a good data point for you to know if you're going to try to practice cyber hygiene. Right? So what we're going to offer you guys is, because we can't go into all the details of all the elements of cyber hygiene, for all of those that are on the call, right, that registered, we are actually going to send you, this is a PDF document that details practical things that you can do from a cyber hygiene perspective. And it covers a whole lot of things, especially with people working from home, email, web, social, IoT, right? Even your, for parental controls for your kids, all of that is in here. Even if you get hacked, there's some remediation steps, things to do, things not to do. So we're going to offer that. So hopefully you guys are registered. You'll get that in a follow-up thank you email from us. All right. So that's cyber hygiene. Now, here's what gets really more interesting. So cybercrime, Fast and Furious, it's been Fast and Furious, we know that, has created an increased need for cyber hygiene. But you know what's also created? It's created opportunity. It's created opportunity for a lot of people in the cyber market, in the cyber industry. So now when you start thinking about it, you're like, oh, this is great. Oftentimes people ask me, this is why I have the slide here. They say, what are your top kind of, which part of cyber should I go into? What should I learn and all that? And so I want to just offer this up. So these are my top 3 kind of skill sets, right? I want to make a distinction here. There's a distinction between skill set and the job function or role. For example, penetration testing is a skill set, but that skill set can allow you to advance or get roles as a penetration tester in a vulnerability assessment kind of role. You can be in a user awareness kind of role. You can function as a threat intelligence or researcher. So there's a distinction there. So oftentimes somebody says, hey, I do pen testing. And no, I'm talking about getting those skill sets. That's foundational. That's why it's on my list. If you don't know how the bad guys are thinking and how the offensive adversary works, it's a lot tougher to do everything else. If you do know that, it gives you an advantage over everything, all the other domains when it comes to cyber. So that's number 1. Number 2, from a future or forward-looking perspective, artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, key, it's already exploding, but even more so. Again, that skill set allows you to be a function in a variety of roles: cloud security, data science, fraud detection, AI in itself, and of course, incident response, because you're dealing with volumes and volumes of data, which is even going to be more and more important as we go into this 5G world, right? And then leadership is the other one. This is probably the one that gets the least amount of attention, but leadership allows you to be able to scale whatever it is you're doing, to be a multiplier. So these are my top 3. Now, here's the second thing that we promised. I said, we're going to amp up your cyber career. How are we going to do that? And I used the example of Dick Fosbury that used a technique to improve his jumping skills. So what does amping up really mean? Well, I'm glad you asked, even though you didn't. Glad you asked. When you amp up, and what we're talking about when we say amp up, amp actually stands for autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That's what AMP actually stands for in this context. And this whole notion of the AMP up mindset was inspired by a book called Drive from the best-selling author, Dan Pink, right? He used it from a perspective of employers. We're using it differently here. So what do I mean by AMP up? What does this, So before I give you the details of this, I want to explain why it's so powerful. Let me explain why it's so powerful first. Most of us, we look at our careers in a very linear fashion. What do I mean by that? Okay, you graduate college, or if you don't go to college, right, you get a degree, you get a certification, it's linear step by step, right? It's kind of like, this is what I gotta do. Oh, you want a promotion, you go get a cert, and then you get a promotion, and then things stop, and then until you and you keep working, right? You keep kind of learning on the job or whatever, but then, so it's a very, very linear approach. What we're talking about when we're saying you wanna amp up your cyber career is you want to go exponential. And the reason you have to start thinking exponentially is that's the only way you're going to be able to leapfrog. Have you ever seen a company where somebody in a company, they create a role for somebody? They're like, you know what, we're going to create a role for this person, right? Because the role didn't exist before. Right. So that is non-linear, right? Because the role didn't even exist. That person leapfrogged, and that role could be as high 2, 3, 4 steps higher. Okay. So that's an example. There's many more examples of this. Let me explain it this way. Have you guys heard the story of the inventor of chess? Right. Real quickly, because we're running out of time here. I want to make mindful of your time. Real quickly, here's the story. Okay? A wise man that invented chess, right? This is a fable, by the way, so it's not necessarily true. In fact, it's not true, right? But this wise man invented chess. He gave it to the king of India. He said, hey, here's a gift. The king of India was so happy with him. He said, tell me anything you want from my treasury. I will give it to you. You know, gold, silver, what have you. All right, so you do that. And he thinks about it for a minute and he says, yeah, king, instead of the gold, how about I do this? How about you give me a grain of rice, right? A grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard. On the second square of the chessboard, give me 2 grains, and then keep doubling, right? So on the third one, give me 4, 8, keep doubling until all 64 squares are accounted for. So put yourself in issues. Somebody offered you gold. Would you go gold or would you go grain? Obviously, everybody will pick gold, right? By the way, that's what we do today with our careers. In that linear fashion, we're going for the gold. All right, so here's the real impact. This is exponential because by the time the king and his servants by the time they got to halfway, not even halfway through the boards, the volume, right? The number of grains was humongous. If they had gone to 64 squares, just to give you some perspective, it would have been over 18 trillion grains. It would have covered the entire country of India, 50 feet up. So there was just no way they could grant that request. So when we talk about amping up, this is what I'm talking about, but it requires time, it requires autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So what is autonomy? Autonomy is, this is above and beyond what you do today. If you go to work, that's yeah, if you're learning stuff at work, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're thinking about amping up your career, you have to have an autonomy of time. You have to schedule, it's a very small amount of time, no more than 2 hours, no less than an hour. Okay, there's a minimum, so anywhere between 1 or 2 hours where you're actually dedicating, we call it the amp time, to improve. The point is not to learn stuff. You're supposed to do stuff to improve. Improve is the key word, right? So that's autonomy. Mastery is when you have this mindset, again, not that just you want to improve, but you want to improve deliberately. So during that time, you're doing mastery acts. Most of us today, we don't even, once we get a certification, we're done. We move on to the next thing. We get certificate. No. That's not what this is about, right? And I couldn't cover this in as much detail, again, during this presentation, which is why we have a PDF for you that we're going to talk about. And then the third element here is purpose. So when you tie that autonomy and mastery to a purpose that you want to achieve with your career and life goal, it could be for your kids, it could be for family, it could be for something that's deeply personal to you. Trust me, that's when things start happening. Each grain, by the way, this is a daily practice. So if you go back to that analogy with the grain of rice, right? So each day is one of those squares, right? You put in your time on that, number one. The next time you want to improve incrementally, not too much, right? Even if you don't double, just improve incrementally. And you keep, and what happens is that compounding effect produces exponential growth in your skills. So much so that you will have recruiters calling you saying, hey, whatever this is. So we're giving you some very specific things in this PDF. Again, I just knew I wasn't going to be able to cover it, do it justice on this presentation. So this actually details all of the things that you need to do. Practical things. I'm not talking theory here. These are practical things that you can do to really amp up your cyber career. Okay, so now some gotchas real quickly. And I know we're almost on the time. Do we have, actually, let me ask Sean and Drew, how much time? People still, can I keep going or do we have to wrap things up?
Looks like we're 2 minutes over, but everyone's still here. So I think we can keep moving forward.
We will be taking questions here in a few minutes. Loosely quote. Okay, I'm going to keep going unless you tell me otherwise. So, okay, because I can't really hear you. All right, so here's the thing. A couple of disclaimers. When you start your AMP journey, you're going to run into some issues. The first issue, let me explain, using the Chinese bamboo seed, right? Because it requires time. This isn't it's not a 12-step program. There's nothing wrong with those, by the way, I'm not saying, but for amping up, right? There's a big difference between trying to amp up or trying to just meet, linear kind of growth in your career. For amping up, it requires time. The Chinese bamboo seed story, if you haven't heard it, Chinese bamboo seed, once you plant it, after about a year, you keep watering for a year, you get this tiny little seed sprout. And the second year you keep watering, nothing happens. The third year, nothing happens. The fourth year, nothing happens. In the fifth year, you know what happens in the fifth year? In the span of about 5 months or so, the tree or seed grows up to be 90 feet tall in about 5 weeks. The question is, how long did it take the tree to grow? Was it 5 weeks or 5 months? Okay. Why am I saying this? When we talk about exponential growth in your career, if you keep amping, you're not necessarily going to see the result. Like, first of all, it's not going to be that tiny seed sprout, maybe in a year. But then there's going to come a point where all of a sudden the career explodes, right? It goes to 90 feet tall, and you're like, holy cow, what happened? But the problem is most people stop watering, right? They stop watering at year 2 or year 1, right? They get discouraged, and that's the challenge. So you got to stay up. Here's the other challenge you're going to run into. Well-meaning people are going to tell you things are impossible, okay? Like the story of this young boy. This young boy had a stuttering problem, and the classic question, what do you want to be when you grow up? The teacher actually gave that to the entire class. Said, hey, what do you all want to be when you grow up? And the boy says, okay. So then they call him out to the front of the class. Hey, he had a stuttering problem, by the way, but he forced himself to say, I want to be on TV. I want to be on TV. You know what the teacher said? This is a teacher. Can you imagine this? This is a teacher. The teacher told the boy, asked him a couple of questions. He says, has anybody in your school ever been on TV? And the boy said, no. Has anybody in this classroom or school ever been on TV? The boy said, no. Has anybody in this entire neighborhood ever been on TV? The guy said, no. The teacher said, why in the world would you ever think you're going to get on TV? Right? Why in the world? She didn't even think it was possible. The reason I'm bringing this up is once you start on your AMP journey, people are going to look at you like you're crazy, right? You keep watering and you keep trying to improve. People are like, why are you wasting time? Don't fall for it. Do not, I beg you, don't, just keep going. It's not an easy thing to do. I know this because I've tried it. Trust me, I know it works. Just don't fall for it, because well-meaning your family members, they'll tell you, why are you doing that? Well, just keep now. Here's the interesting thing. You know what happened with this young boy? I'm going to ask you guys. This is the last major slide. I think I have one last slide question, but question, who do you guys think that young boy is? Anybody? Do we still have anybody on? I don't know. Who do you think that young boy is? That young boy that teacher said that wanted to be on TV, and that teacher said, is that possible? Has anybody ever been on TV? Or somebody says Drake, TV shows, all of the above. Steve Harvey. Yeah, whoever said Steve Harvey, that's a good one. That was Steve Harvey, right? And he kind of proves the quote that we were talking about earlier. It's never too late to be who you might have been, but he also kind of proves the exponential effect, right? It feels like all of a sudden Steve Harvey was everywhere, right? Nobody knew who he was, and all of a sudden he's on, Family Feud. He's everywhere, right? He's got a radio show, but that's because he's been amping up his career and trying to improve and struggling through it, and then all of a sudden it explodes. So that's kind of the effect we're talking about when we talk about amping up your career. All right, so last question of the day. Who is Keira Knightley and who is Natalie Portman? Which one? The one on the left or the one on the right? Somebody said Natalie Portman is on the left. Natalie Portman is on the left. Yeah. A lot of people are, P-Rose is on the right. Well, let me just say this. Unless, I'm cross-eyed, Keira Knightley is actually on the left. Natalie Portman is on the right. What's my point? What you see is absolutely not what you get. Absolutely not what you get. So now if there's any questions, I'll turn it over to Drew and we can take some questions. Thank you for indulging the time. I know I went over. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Ladi, as well for the presentation.
Questions.
We do have one question.
You are
pulled up
muted,
here.
Drew. I cannot hear you.
Oh. Can everyone else hear me? Brian's giving me a thumbs up.
I can hear.
Ladi, do you have yours?
I can't. Oh, that's because I'm muted probably. Say something, Drew.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Now I can. Sorry, I was muted because of
Okay, awesome.
This always happens. Somebody says, I can hear. Cool. All right, let's go. Sorry.
Awesome. So yeah, we do have one question up here. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to use the Q&A button down below. But the first one up is back when we were looking at the daily swipes from Tinder and LinkedIn and stuff, they were wanting to know if those daily swipes on Tinder were before or after COVID.
That was actually pre-COVID. So
Okay.
I imagine they're down now, but you never know, I guess. But I imagine they're down. So that was actually pre-COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks like one more question coming in. Ladi, what do you kind of recommend for someone really wanting to get into the cybersecurity realm? So they're not really able to amp up their career quite yet, but they're kind of just looking to get their feet wet. What do you recommend to them?
Well, I'm going to answer that question in two ways. One is, do you have a technical background or a non-technical background? Let's wait to see the response. Because my recommendation will differ based on where they currently are at, if that makes sense. Are you guys with me on that? Mm-hmm. So please let me know what that is. Okay, I guess I could keep talking. All right. So let me assume.
Yeah, I just say, yeah.
Let me assume. Yeah. I'll go through both of them. I'll just go through both of them. All right. Here's the thing. If you don't have a technical background, by technical I mean you are not even in IT. You don't really. I mean, you know the basics, right? Digital stuff, but you've never really held an IT role. What I recommend is that you should start out by actually doing something that's IT related, installing software, doing even things on your own computer. If you have a computer, right? Virtualization, just try to get introduced into that realm first. And I know that takes time. People don't have time. That's the one thing we all do not have. But I would really highly encourage that person to do that. If you can't do that, and you want to jump in and just with your feet wet. And by the way, when I say IT, let me back up. I'm not saying learn how to code, because I think sometimes people say, oh, I got to learn how to, no. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, try to understand how to install software, for example, how virtualization works, things like that. Just kind of get comfortable with the command line, for example. Command line being a prompt, right, on a Windows or Mac or Linux machine where you can type commands. Try to just get that level of confidence. So that's what I mean there. But if you can't do that, right, then my next recommendation is try to go through an official course, right? Try to go through, I know Maryville has a course that you can enroll in, but try to go through an official course that kind of walks you through, the basics. If you can do that, I think that will prepare you, at least give you some of the foundational things that you need to learn. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so then so that's if you're not technical. Now, if you are technical being you can install and you're comfortable with the command line. Command line, again, I already kind of defined that. What I suggest you do is actually two things. One is if you're just trying to get it to change your career-wise, right? You want to break into the cybersecurity industry market, try to get a certification of some sort. There's a number of certifications out there. So try to get one of those, enroll, try to get it, because it will at least get you in the door, right? That is not by no means, it has absolutely nothing to do with your technical skills, right? It just gets you in the door. After that, that's when the real work begins. So I'll pause there because again, I want to be mindful of people's times.
Yeah, I think we got one last question here. So obviously we talked a little bit about all the different phishing campaigns going around, like bonuses in the office and stuff. Do you think these problems of phishing have increased since COVID and everyone's working from home?
Yes, absolutely. Has increased in a number of different, I mean, and there's a lot of research to prove that. A variety of security companies have done research to say, I mean, just think about it. Remember what I said about the volume, right? Anytime where there's a lot of volume, okay, so now just think about it. Before, while, kids were at home, I mean, at school and all that stuff, you didn't have that amount of volume out online, as evidenced by the stock price of Zoom, for example. Just, you don't have to look too far, right? The reason the Zoom stock rise and everyone's on Zoom, people didn't even know what Zoom was. Most people, and technical people did. Zoom is now a household name, which means everyone's on Zoom at some point. Right? So that gives you some insight, which now also begs the question. Remember, anywhere where there's volume and there's more stuff, man, those guys are going after it, man.
Awesome. Any last questions anyone wants to submit? And if not, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Give it a few seconds. Not seeing anyone else come through.
Yeah, if not, they can hit us up online. Oh, by the way, cautionary tale. Please, I beg you, if you're going to connect with me on LinkedIn, just reference something like, hey, I was on the webinar, because I'm not going to accept your LinkedIn connection request. Otherwise, it's nothing against you. I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm happy to connect. I love to connect. So just let me know, but I just don't blindly connect. So.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Ladi. I really loved your presentation. Thank you for being here. Excellent presentation. Many people have said that already, and I will just reiterate that. Great presentation, great involvement. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Be on the lookout for an email. We have a follow-up email that we'll send out. It will include a link to our live stream, so you can look at this, so you can view this again or share it with your friends, family, and colleagues. And we will also have a survey going out so that you can let us know what you liked about it and how we could improve. And that will also include your PDF document that Ladi promised. So we'll get that out in the very near future. And we have another speaker series event next week on Tuesday evening. This one will be at 6 p.m. Check out our LinkedIn posts for the details, and we will see you all later. Thank you so much for being here.
One last question, sorry. I think somebody said, is there a tool that I can advise on for cybersecurity beginner?
Oh yeah, that question just came through. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so let me just answer that.
Sure.
Remember I said in my presentation, penetration testing is foundation. You just got to know how to. So the one tool I will offer up is Kali Linux. That should be your go-to kind of dig in and figure out what's going on. But trust me, Kali Linux is not just a tool, man. It's got over 350, probably upwards of 500 different tool sets in it. It's easy to get overwhelmed, but that would be my go-to.
Oh, you need to say that there's a great book about penetration testing in Kali Linux, and I believe they just released a second edition of it. And that you can find it on Amazon or whatever bookstore. Cool. Really good resource. Great. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we will see you next week.
All right, guys.
All right. Thanks, Ladi.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
Ladi.
you.
Are you guys going to stay? Actually, Drew and